In 1975, a struggling actor in New York was so broke he had only $106 in his bank account. He couldn't pay his rent, he couldn't afford food, and in one of the hardest decisions of his life, he had to sell his dog to make ends meet. But just a few years later, that same man would walk onto the stage at the Academy Awards as his movie won Best Picture. His name? Sylvester Stallone. But the story of how he got there is more than just a Hollywood success story. It's a story about what happens when someone refuses to give up on a dream, even when the world tells them to. And to understand it, we have to go back to the beginning. Hi, my name is Andrew, and today I want to tell you a story, because sometimes the most powerful lessons about life come from the people who almost didn't make it. This is the story of Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone wasn't supposed to become a movie star. When he was born in 1946, doctors used forceps during delivery and accidentally severed a nerve in his face. The result was permanent nerve damage. His lip drooped, his speech was slurred, and one side of his face was partially paralyzed. In other words, the exact opposite of what Hollywood usually looks for. As a child, he struggled in school. He was expelled from 14 different schools before the age of 13 due to behavioral issues, antisocial behavior, and being disruptive. He was called a wild child. Teachers didn't think he had much of a future and considered him a menace. He was even voted most likely to end up in the electric chair by his own classmates. He was sent to schools for troubled youth, including the Devereaux Manor High School in Pennsylvania. At one point, he lived in a bus station for several weeks. But Stallone had something that couldn't be graded on a report card. He had imagination. He knew that he was misunderstood, and somewhere deep down, he believed he was meant to do something bigger. In the midst of his troubles, he eventually found a passion for acting, which led him to attend the American College of Switzerland. And so he began acting. The problem was, no one wanted to hire him. Throughout the early 1970s, Stallone auditioned constantly, and he did pick up a few gigs. He worked as an extra and minor character in films like Downhill Racer, The Sidelong Glances of a Pigeon Kicker, and MASH, as well as Clute in 1971. But more often than not, he was rejected. Directors said his face looked strange. Producers said his voice was difficult to understand. Casting agents said he just didn't fit. In total, Sylvester Stallone was rejected more than 1,300 times by casting directors, agents, and producers. Eventually, the money ran out. Stallone and his wife were so poor they sometimes had to choose between paying rent or buying food. Then came the moment that would haunt him for years. With no money left, he had to sell his beloved dog Butkus to a stranger outside of a 7-Eleven. He sold him for $40. Imagine that moment, being so desperate, selling your own dog to a complete stranger because you can't afford to take care of him anymore. For most people, that would have been the end of the dream. That was rock bottom. But something happened that would change everything. In 1975, Stallone watched a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner. Wepner was supposed to lose badly, but somehow he lasted nearly the entire fight and even knocked Ali down. That night sparked an idea. Sylvester Stallone went home and started writing. For 20 hours straight, he wrote. And when he finished, he had written the script for a movie called Rocky, the story of a small-time boxer given one impossible chance at greatness. In many ways, it was like his own life. Soon, studios started showing interest in the script, but there was one problem. They didn't want Stallone in the movie. Stallone was an unknown actor. They said he looked funny and talked funny. But the script was so good that producers offered him $125,000, then $250,000, and eventually $350,000. But they wanted a real movie star to play Rocky, someone like Burt Reynolds or Robert Redford. But to Stallone, that would mean losing the very heart and soul of the story. So he refused. Remember, this was the man who had just sold his dog for $40. And he was now turning down hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why? Because he believed in the story. And he believed in himself. No compromise. Eventually, one small studio agreed to make the movie, but only under strict conditions. The budget would be tiny, and Stallone would be paid almost nothing. He didn't care. He got the role. Filming Rocky was a gamble. They shot many scenes on real Philadelphia streets without permits. Remember the famous scene running up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art? That almost didn't make the film because it wasn't in the original script, and they had no budget or permits to film at that location. They had to film it quickly before the authorities could stop them. And when it was all said and done, something about the movie felt different. It wasn't just about boxing. It was about hope, about perseverance, about getting one shot and refusing to waste it. And the audiences felt that. On November 21, 1976, Rocky premiered in theaters. Perhaps no one except Sylvester Stallone expected just how well this film would do. But something incredible happened. People connected with the story. They saw themselves in Rocky, the underdog, the fighter, the dreamer. The movie exploded. Rocky became the highest grossing film of the year, and at the Academy Awards, it won Best Picture. Stallone was paid only $25,000 for the screenplay, but anticipating the success of his film, he had shrewdly negotiated a percentage of the box office takings, and that move alone earned him $2.5 million. Just a year earlier, Stallone had been broke and sleeping on friends' couches. In an interview with World Boxing News, Stallone said, "You have to understand that in the year before I did Rocky, my total income was $1,400 for the entire year. I got $35 a week as an usher, about $100 a month. Now, he's one of the most famous actors in the world. But there was one more thing he had to do. After Rocky succeeded, Stallone went back to that 7-Eleven where he had sold Butkus. He waited there for 3 days, hoping the man who had bought the dog would return. Eventually, he did. Stallone offered to buy the dog back. The man refused. Stallone kept increasing the offer. How about $100? $500? $1,000? Eventually, he paid $15,000 to get Butkus back. That dog would later appear in Rocky II. In a way, the story came full circle. Sylvester Stallone's story isn't really about boxing, or Hollywood, or fame. It's about something much deeper. At some point in life, almost everyone faces a moment when the world tells them that their dream is too big, too unrealistic, too risky, too unlikely, too late. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can accept the limitations that other people have placed on you, or you can keep going, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's uncertain, even when you're down to your last $106 in the bank. Because sometimes the difference between failure and greatness is simply refusing to quit. And that might be the real lesson behind the story of Rocky. Because in the end, success comes when you take chances, when you fail over and over, but then you get back up and you try again. A truly meaningful life is never built on comfort. It's built on courage. So what's your story? What's your dream? Don't be shy. Go ahead and take action. Let me know in the comments. But don't give up, my friend. Keep on going, and I'll see you in the next video.